Good morning, everybody. Good morning. It's JPR, and welcome back to another video. And also, welcome to 2020. I can't believe we finally made it. Before I start, I'd like to acknowledge that 2020 marks the 10th year of my YouTube journey, and I am incredibly thankful to have you all here with me. Regardless of whether you are a new or old fan, I truly appreciate you. Here's to a great year ahead of us. Anyway, I was finally able to catch a look at the newest Pokemon movie, Mewtwo Strikes Back Evolution, a CGI remake of Mewtwo Strikes Back that is mostly faithful to the original 1998 movie. Since this is a remake, for this review, I'm mostly going to be focusing on the differences between this movie and the original. With that said, there will be some spoilers throughout this review, but I'll try to keep them to a minimum since I acknowledge that a lot of you watching weren't even alive when this movie originally came out. And for reference, I am reviewing the Japanese version of the movie with English subtitles, so please don't ask if Mewtwo's circumstances of one's birth quote is in the movie, because most of that stuff was entirely dub-added in the original. It would have no reason being in the Japanese remake. The one thing I can say for sure that won't be in the new dub is Ash's reference to the Vikings living in Minnesota, because Team Rocket doesn't actually dress as Vikings this time around. I'm guessing the Association for Living Vikings didn't appreciate the joke. First off, the most obvious talking point is the CGI models themselves. When we first got a proper look at the movie, a lot of people, including myself, were turned off by the look of the models, particularly the human characters. I will say that the human characters definitely take some getting used to, and because of that, the first 20-ish minutes of the movie can feel a little weird, but after that, I did find myself pretty much unfazed by them. It did also vary by character. I thought that some characters like Misty and Team Rocket looked great, but then you have these people like this lady from the wharf, and there's just something funky looking about her. I never did get used to her look, but thankfully she's in the movie for all of 5 minutes, so it really wasn't that bad. The Pokemon, on the other hand, look fantastic. A lot of them have realistic touches to them, but they keep that same original anime look, and I thought it was just a perfect blend of the two. Mew in particular, I just loved looking at this film. It's just as cute as in the original. The way it moves is very satisfying, and he still has his big pink bubbles that he makes towards the end of the film, and they look great. Regardless of your thoughts on the CGI models, there is one thing that I think everyone can agree on, and that is that these models are stunningly high quality. There was so much detail in the hair and the clothing and some of the Pokemon. Charizard's body is actually a bit scaly looking, and Mewtwo has this neat rough looking texture on him that you can really notice in the close-up scenes. You can really notice the detail in an early scene in the movie where Mewtwo creates the giant storm and Ash and his friends are running through the rain, and afterward their clothes are all wet and their skin is all shiny. Those were definitely the most visually appealing parts of the movie to me. Also, later in the movie when Ash is trying to get down to the battlefield to stop all the Pokemon from fighting, by the time he gets to the ground he's completely covered in dirt on his face and his clothes. It was little things like that that I enjoyed seeing. It was nice that they were actually taking advantage of some of the things that the CGI models allowed them to do. Lighting is another tool that they made great usage of in this movie. I already mentioned the stormy scenes and how great they look, but beyond that you can actually notice some differences in lighting between the original and this one. For instance, the beginning of this movie, the lab where Mewtwo was created is brightly lit, where in the original it was dim the entire time. Cloning Pokemon in the dark probably didn't live up to OSHA regulations, I'm imagining. Anyway, only after Mewtwo starts rampaging does the lab turn dark and ominous. I liked how they used the lighting for that more dramatic tonal shift. A similar thing happens later in the movie where after Mewtwo unleashes his legion of Pokeballs to catch and clone all the trainers' Pokemon, it suddenly turns dark inside the castle. In the original movie, the lighting inside the castle never changed. Lighting is just one of those things that I think if you're using CGI, it's naturally easier to use, and again, it was just nice to see that they took advantage of it. There are a few complaints that I have about the CGI though. First and foremost, the action scenes. They do look a bit clunky and unnatural and maybe even a bit stiff at times. I think the filmmakers realized this, and so instead they decided to utilize a lot more camera movement in this version compared to the original, but more often than not, it just looks awkward. To me, the only scene in the movie that I thought was objectively worse than the original was the battle between Mewtwo's Venusaur, Blastoise, and Charizard, and the originals. The models just don't capture that same sense of speed or intensity in this scene. I noticed it the most when Venusaur and Blastoise were both KO'd. They just kind of slam into the ground without much feeling of an actual impact. It was like watching someone drop an action figure. While we're on the topic of intensity of impacts, I want to talk about one other scene from the end of the movie. Spoiler warning if you haven't seen the original, so skip ahead to the time posted on the screen. But in the original movie, when Ash gets hit by Mew and Mewtwo's combined psychic attacks, there's like this huge explosion that covers the entire battlefield. But in this one, it's like the two beams collide and then there's just this little whoosh that happens. There's a few moments like that in the movie. It's just a little underwhelming. So yeah, I hate to say it, but I think the Pokemon battles are the worst looking part of the movie. They just didn't seem to have that same polish that so many other scenes did. Alright, I think that does it for the visuals. Overall, I'd say it was mostly an upgrade. A few scenes could have been done better, but by and large, it looked much better than I anticipated. The next major difference that I noticed between the two movies was the pacing. This movie is 20 minutes longer than the original movie, and trust me, they did not add 20 minutes worth of new scenes to this one. Instead, a lot of scenes are just elongated for seemingly no reason. I think it works in the beginning of the movie when they're trying to flesh out Mewtwo's backstory a bit more and show off some of their new animation techniques, but definitely as it went on, some scenes just felt unnecessarily long. And unfortunately, a lot of the extended scenes are action scenes, and you already know how I feel about most of those. I did think the original Mewtwo Strikes Back was a little too short with a runtime around 75 minutes, and I would have liked to see a few extra scenes to give more depth to certain characters, but instead of doing that, they just took the scenes that already existed and made them long for the sake of being long. It made this movie's pacing feel very sluggish in my opinion. But moving on from that, let's talk about the music. The music is very good, which was pleasing considering that this is more than likely the last time that Shinji Miyazaki will be composing for a Pokemon movie. It uses many remastered themes from the original movie, in addition to some reused themes from more recent movies and the Sun and Moon anime. It was a welcome surprise to hear the familiar Totem Pokemon battle theme pop up when Ash and his friends cross the sea to get to New Island, and it fits the scene very well. They also use the same theme from the end of Genesect and The Legend Awakened when the conflict on New Island is resolved. It was some nice musical continuity to connect the two different Mewtwo movies that only certain fans would pick up on. My only gripe with the soundtrack was that the iconic theme that played in the original when Ash emerges from the smoke with the group of original Pokemon behind him is replaced with a reused theme from Hoopa and the Clash of Ages, which just made me go, what? It's not a bad theme by any means, I just definitely don't think it was worthy of replacing the original. I can't say if any of this will hold up for the English dub of the film though, since most of the modern Pokemon films have their soundtracks completely replaced in the dub. So for many of you, this segment of the review won't even apply. But who knows, last year we got lucky with the dub with the power of us keeping the entirety of the Japanese soundtrack, so anything is possible. Plot-wise, this is essentially the same movie as the original. If you liked the original movie, I wouldn't say this movie changes anything up enough to make you dislike it. The characters are the same, the motivations are the same. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing is up to you. I know some people like the remakes to be incredibly faithful, which this one is, and others would like to see more stuff changed up if it makes for a better story. I personally don't think Mewtwo Strikes Back was a masterpiece of a story by any means, it was more so just a movie with a lot of memorable moments for most Pokemon fans, and those moments are still intact here. Nothing is radically changed like in Pokemon the movie I Choose You, which was a turnoff for some people. Will the same anti-racism message be there? Again, I can't say because that was all dub added in the original. It was never a part of the original Japanese film, so obviously it wasn't in the remake of this film either. So anything regarding music and the script all falls on the shoulders of the new dub makers. I can't say with certainty if that will all be intact. It seems like this movie is going through a lot of complications to get to the West right now, and unfortunately there still isn't a slate of release for the film outside Japan. But regardless of what happens in that department, I have to say I was pleasantly surprised by this film. It was a remake that I really wasn't expecting anything substantial from. For Pokemon movie standards, I'm gonna give it a 7 out of 10. It's worth at least one watch just to have fun picking out all the minor differences and experiencing this new form of animation that Pokemon hasn't really dabbled in before now. I do think the original film is the slightest bit better, but this is still a serviceable remake, and I see it being particularly popular with new fans who are children. I hope you all enjoyed this review and get a chance to see Mewtwo Strikes Back Evolution whenever it may be coming to the West. Be sure to like and subscribe for more, and I'll see you guys next time.